This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. So here, we completed your the Git CLIs and your Visual Studio Hub and GitHub desktop, all those things. So how can you pull, clone all the things with respect to our GitHub in here? So now we would like to go with a new concept like a DevOps starter in here. So what is the use of this one? So the use of this one is particular something like it's like kind of introduction to my Azure DevOps engine. So what this will do, actually what will happen in here is like the very first thing, like we will have the code, in your GitHub. Okay, you'll be have the code in GitHub. Now what I'll do, I will try to deploy the code in GitHub to my web application or my apps services within my within our Azure cloud in here, Azure cloud in here. Okay, so GitHub is a different environment and Azure is a different environment. So we know that you are able to your when you go with your and you can access your GitHub. Now GitHub, so GitHub sign in. So when you click on this one, you're trying to access your GitHub account in here. So this is a totally different, on the URL, and Azure is different URL in here. And this is your Microsoft account in here. So now when you have a code within your GitHub, in that scenario, how can you push your code from your GitHub to my Azure cloud within my web applications within my cloud level in here? So in that scenario, what you do, you can go with your DevOps starter. Of course, we also have the other ways where you can pull the code from GitHub, but this is like just for introduction purpose of my Azure DevOps Engine. So when you're trying to pull the things from my from your GitHub, what Azure does in here. So what different steps have been followed by Azure to pull the code from GitHub and push it to my web applications in here. So the very first step with respect to my Azure level in here, what it will do. So we have to create a, when you're trying to create, we'll go with your DevOps starter in here. And what we do, we will try to create, I would say, from Azure, we will create an, a repository, I would say, a repository in your GitHub. So how this has been possible? So from Azure, how can you create your repository in your GitHub? So till now, you went into your directly to your GitHub and you try to create a click on new in here and you create your own repository. But now what we're trying to do in here, I'm trying to create my repository within my GitHub from my Azure level in here, from my cloud level in here. So from Azure, we will try to create a repository in your GitHub. So once your repository has been created in your GitHub, the things, one second. So once your repository is built in GitHub, your GitHub repository will not be empty, but that will contain a default code inside in it. Okay. So that's what will happen now. Once the repository is created in GitHub, or the repository which is created in GitHub, or it's in this manner, the repository which is created in GitHub contains some dummy code, or I would say default code in here. So that default code will be deployed into my Azure web application in here. Okay, so now once you have your code in here, now what I will do, your Azure will try to pull that particular code. See, Azure is trying to create the repository and Azure is trying to put some default code in the particular repository, and again Azure is trying to pull the code from GitHub and it's trying to push that into my web application in here. So everything is been doing by your Azure only. Only thing like it's using the GitHub in between to place a repository, to create a repository, or to place the code in the repository, and again it tried to pull the code from the same repository again. So while pulling the code from repository now, so what a default code you have in here, so what you have to Azure will do, Azure will pull the code, will pull the code in here. So while pulling the code, it tried to run two jobs in here. Azure will pull the code and will try to run two jobs. What are those? The very first job is like, it's called as your build job. The other one, it's called as your deployment job in here. Deployment job in here. So what do you mean by a build job in here? So what do you mean build job and what do you mean by deployment job in here? So these two jobs will be initiated when your Azure is trying to pull your code to from my from my GitHub to my Azure Devops engine, sorry, Azure web application here. So while pulling the code, deployment and things in here, it requires two jobs to run. The very first job is a build job. So what this will do is like, it will read the code from GitHub, and what it will do, it will try to convert the code into from consistent format to inconsistent format. For example, if you see here, so I can see my normal code looking something like, like this. This is my normal generic code you may see with respect to my GitHub repository or any way in here. So this kind of things cannot be, cannot be directly pulled in here. So I can see multiple folders in here. So all these folders need to be expanded. All the variables what you have need to be expanded. Okay. So all those things need to be expanded, and the expanded whatever has been done, try to move into a consistent format. So what are the things you have? The things which you have in here is a kind of inconsistent format. It may not be understood by Azure. So what it will do, it will try to convert this format in some other format where it can understand by Azure, and it can deploy the the code into my Azure web applications in here. So the build job, what it will do, it read the code from a GitHub repository, and it will convert the code. It will try to convert the code from inconsistent format to consistent format in here. Okay, so this is what it will be done within your build job. So what it will do, build job, it will try to read the code from GitHub, and it will try to convert the code from inconsistent format to consistent format where your Azure can understand. So here inconsistent and consistent doesn't, it means that it's just trying to expand the code what you have in here. You try to open up all the folders in here. You try to see what are the things you have in here. You try to see each and every part what you see in here. You try to expand. You try to expand your variables, your parameters, each and every point, and it will try to place in a different format, but not this in format anymore. Okay, it's not like it's wrong in here. It's only the way a developer write it, the similar way it write in here only. But the thing is, like, your Azure, what it will do, it try to expand each and every folder, it try to expand each and every parameter, your variables, each and everything, it try to expand it and keep it in a separate format. And that particular format, it will be used to deploy within my web application in here. So that particular deployment part will be done in using your deployment job in here. So what will happen here? The consistent format, what we already have, the consistent format, what we have, what is being converted already, is been converted already. So that particular code will be used to deploy within your web applications. Okay, the consistent format which has been converted already will be used to deploy in your app services within Azure level. Okay, so this is your actual deployment part we'll do in here. But the beauty in here is like these two jobs will be run by your Azure only. So Azure will pull the code and will try to run these two jobs. Who will run these two jobs in here? These two jobs will be run in Azure. But where does it run? It will run in your GitHub again, because the code is always in the GitHub. So the formatting part, deployment part, from where it will be happening? It will be happening from your GitHub. But who will run that? It will be run by your Azure level engineer. So Azure will pull the code and will try to run two jobs in GitHub. GitHub by whom? By your Azure again. Okay. So the Azure will pull the code and try to run two jobs in GitHub by Azure. So what are the two jobs? One is a build job, another one is your deployment job in here. So what does a build job do? It will try to pull the code what you have in your GitHub. I'll show you the actual code, the default code what you have, and will try to convert the code from inconsistent format to a consistent format. So this is something it's not really wrong in here. Everything what you wrote, what you have in the code level is correct only. But the thing is like your Azure will try to convert, like expand all the variables and parameters and try to keep it a different format where Azure can go ahead and deploy that converted format into my app services which I will be in Azure level in here. So these are the different things will happen when you're trying to go with your DevOps starter new concept. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's try to start the things. Let's try to see how can you create your DevOps starter in here, and how can you create a repository within your GitHub from your Azure level. So from Azure we will try to create a repository first, and the repository contains your some default code in here already. Okay, the repository which has been created in GitHub contains some default code already. So Azure will try to pull the code from the repository and will try to run the below two jobs so that it can go and deploy things in here. So what are two jobs? Build job and my deployment job in here. So any questions guys with respect to my 2, 3, 4 and 4, 2, 3, 4 points in here? Okay. So let's go ahead. Now let's me go with my DevOps starter. DevOps starter. Click on your DevOps starter in here. So this is like I'm trying to go ahead and create my DevOps starter. So here it's asking you what do you want to do with my DevOps starter. Is it like uh, do you want to go with the static website? I have a code for website in here, or do you want to go with your .NET? Do you want to go to Node.js, PHP, Python, Java? So what kind of code you're trying to go with? So you also have a new language called as Go. Okay, so using your Go language also you can create applications. And for information, your Kubernetes, your Docker, or all those things will be created by your Go language only at the backend. Okay, but for now what I want to do, I want to create a static website. So I want to using my HTML page based upon the code what is available with you guys. You can choose any one of things in here. So currently I'm going with my static website. Okay, where I'm trying to have with my respect new code in here. Suppose I have my website in here, so CSS, my HTML files in here. The same thing has been asked in here, so HTML, CSS and JavaScript. So using this one I'm trying to create a static website in here. So I'm trying to go with this particular option. If you have a Python code with you, you can choose this all other, or if you have any .NET, Node.js, then you can choose the respective things in here. So there's a new application, so I want to go with my static website in here. Next framework, it's only one thing we have in here, so just go to my next level in here. So now it's asking you where do you want to deploy that particular code within your Azure level. Is it like within your Windows app services or a web applications for containers? So both are related to my same web application only, app service only. But one is like within your container level, another one is directly within your Windows level, as we saw earlier. Normal web application or app services what we saw. So till now we never been touched with your containers in here. For that reason, I'm not going to this particular part in here, but I'm trying to go with my web applications in here. So go ahead, click on create. So once you click on create in here, now what will happen? So here it's asking, we are telling your things, okay, go ahead and try to use my static website. So when I say static website, it will try to create us, it will try to take your, the default code, which is the same thing with respect to my HTML, the CSS, what I showed you earlier, with the same kind of stuff, it will try to have a default code inside. So try to that, it try to take the particular code and keep it ready now. So where it's trying to go and deploy it, and now it's trying to go and deploy into my Azure, your GitHub in here. So, but this is what Azure, your GitHub is in here. So there should be connection between my Azure and GitHub in here. So what is the user ID for my account? It's Sham 2810. Okay, so now what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to provide my permissions, because Azure need permission to access your GitHub account to create the workflow in the sense to create these two jobs in here, or to create the repository in GitHub in here, or to have your the code within your repository which is got in your GitHub in here. To have all this particular part to be done, what it requires access. You Azure need access in here. Okay, for that reason I can say, and go ahead, say authorize. So when you say go and authorize in here, then it will be showing you my organization name. See here, earlier I already chosen, for that reason be probably it may giving my name directly in here. Okay, so or else you have to sign in your GitHub. If it is first time, you need to maybe sign into GitHub. I mean, it may go take you to your GitHub account. You have to sign in over there, and you have to again log in over there, so that it can pull your user ID from your GitHub account for the first time. But since I already done it earlier, it may showing me directly my things in here. So this is my Sham 2010 as a username for my GitHub account. See the same thing, Sham 2810 in here. So now repository creation. So what I told you, from Azure, we will try to create a repository within your GitHub. So the same thing, reason being, it's asking you what is your repository name in here. So I'm trying to provide something, something like, like a static web app. This name is invalid. Yeah, so this is my static website in here, but with this same name the repository will be created, but you can see my web application name is already exists somewhere in my this particular domain. It's like a Gmail, right? Unique, you have to have a unique ID for your web application name. So what I'll do, I'll simply add VRIT just to make the things unique. So this is my web application which will be created automatically. Again, see here, this web application name what you mentioned in here, this application will be this web application will be created automatically for us. So you don't need to create anything in here. Okay, let me make a particular point in here as well. So after pulling it while deploying part, now what I'm doing is here, web application will be created in Azure automatically. So you no need to do any you don't have any manual intervention here. That should be done automatically in here. Okay. So this is the name for web application. There's the repository to be created in your GitHub in here, and the location to have my web application to be created is my east to west. And when you try to create a web application, you have to choose your size as well. So here I would like to go with my basic one, okay, or else let me go with the same thing only, the same size price in here, because when you try to create a web application, internally try to create your virtual machine again to run your what is that, to run your application. So go ahead and click on OK. So I'm trying to choose the same settings. I'm not making any changes in here. You can choose also F1 free, but that will be computed for only 1 hour. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. For that doesn't mean I do not touch that particular point in here. So provided my the user ID, provide my repository name to be created. Let me check, static web application is not there. Visual Studio, GitHub, web app. The static web application not there. So I provide, I'll try to create my things in here. Or else to make more sure, let me go with Azure. The static web app Azure. There's a repository name I'm trying to create, and this is a web application which is going to create in my Azure level. This is the repository which is going to create in my GitHub level. To create my this web app repository here, I've provided my user ID in here. And to do all those things, you need your connection, because who's going to do all those things for you? Who's trying to create the repository? Am I creating it manually? No, Azure is doing for us. So we have to provide the access to Azure. So go ahead, create your repository in your GitHub, because it's your organization, your account. And also this particular web application what you create in the Azure is again within your same subscription. So Azure needs your subscription details for sure in here, but that doesn't mean you have to provide a subscription name. Now go ahead and click on create. Once you click on create in here, now see it'll start. Go ahead and try to create your new repository within my GitHub automatically. So it'll be coming up quickly. So submit my deployment just started. So deployment progress. The deployment progress in here. So now once my deployment is part is done, then I could be able to see two things. One is like my web application will be ready at the same time. My repository also will be ready within my GitHub in here. See, I can see my brand new website got created successfully, just updated. And when you go and click on your repository, I can see some dummy code or default code in here. So within my applications, I can see so index.html, just CSS files in here. So first commit, okay, it just happened in here. Okay, so this is a sample HTML code if we have behind here. So what I will do, I will try to pull this particular code from what is the code you have within your repository level. I'll try to pull this particular code in here and I'll convert to what? To a consistent format in here so that your Azure can understand. So this particular pulling of code and converting to a consistent format can be done using your build job in here. So go to my resource has been created. That means I may be able to also see my new web application as well. Or else let me check it out. So left hand side what you see, this is your GitHub workflow and this is your Azure resources in here. Okay, this is not yet created. So based upon the deployment, what it will do happen, it just created my repository and it added the code internet to my repository in here. That's it. Okay, now this is left hand side is respect to my GitHub and this is respect to my Azure resource in here. So what does your GitHub workflow will contain? Will contain two things, build and deployment. Now already have my code within my some content default code within my repository which is got created in here. Now what I'll do, I will say go ahead and start my workflow. When I start my workflow, it starts with build job where it reads the data or reads the code from a GitHub and it'll try to convert to a consistent format. And later on, using the same consistent format code, it'll try to go ahead and deploy my things into my web application, which will be created automatically by Azure. So let's go ahead now. Again, it requires some permissions to access your workflow execution. Authorize. So it's GitHub authorization what you have in here. So now I can see my repository name and I can see my build is already done. Now it's been deploying to my Azure web applications in here. So once my this is done automatically, I can see my Azure resources on the right hand side with my with my Azure web application name and the URL you need to what you say you need to access. So let me refresh my page in here. See, it's been done. Static web application has been created for me and is the URL endpoint. So click on my URL in here. Now I should be able to see some kind of a default page in here which has been coming up in here. So let me refresh. This should be also tick mark. We'll be seeing time to complete the things in here. So build job and deployment job. So if I want to see the things in here, so click on your build. So navigate to the same again, my GitHub, Sham 2810 for the same repository, and I can under my runs, I can see this runs in here, build and deployment to Azure in here. So where these two are running in here, these two are running under my GitHub. Who is helping to run these two jobs in here? Your Azure is helping to run these two jobs in here. Okay, so Azure will pull the code and will try to run two jobs in GitHub again in here. So Azure is trying to run these two jobs within my GitHub. So going back in here now, see both are done, and also I can see my page coming up success. So this is your default page. This is a default code. Based upon that particular default code, your page has been displayed in here. Okay, so now what I want to do, okay, I don't want to have this particular code. I want to place my own code in here. So I don't want to have this particular code. I want to place my own code. So what do you do, or how can you do this particular part in here? So go to the code level, again do the same old stuff. What is that? Go ahead, copy the URL or open in your GitHub desktop, so that I can clone this particular repository to my local machine, change the code as per your requirement, and again try to push it to my website, so that it will go ahead and it will try to look, you can have your own website automatically in here. So currently, as per based upon the default code what you have in here, based upon that based upon that it's showing you this particular default page in here. But what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to override this particular code with my own code in here. So how do you do that? By simply cloning your, by cloning your repository to my local machine. So this is my URL for my repository to clone, and this is my URL or the path where you want to clone your repository to local machine. So I'm looking in my Azure Devops training gate, and yes, it's looking good for me. Clone it. So meanwhile, let me go back to my D drive and gate. Yeah, I should be able to see my new things coming up. Yeah, I can see 3.2. So I can see my new website just came up in here. My repository came up in here. And internal to this, I can see this whole thing what you see already: GitHub workflows, application ARM template. The same thing I can see in here as well. So within the application level, I can see my code. Based upon this particular code only, you are able to see the things in here, right? So now what I want to do, now I want to, you can either change your code within your index in here, or directly remove all the things and try to place your own code in here. So my own code is lies in here website, the similar kind of code, but it's my own code in here. So going to my gate backend, within my application, place your code. Now go back my GitHub, so I can see a lot many things to be removed and changes in here, and say yes, code changed, and click on my commit. So it's committing to my the branch in here, to my machine. Now push horizon. So it's trying to push a new code now within my, pushing your things, refreshing the repository, and it should be done. Yeah, it's done. To go back here now within my application level, so I should see my own code. It's a code change. This is my comment I have in here 23 seconds ago. Okay, so now what I want to do, I want to pull this new code and I want to deploy that into my Azure web applications in here. So what I'm doing here, again I have to go ahead and when there is a change in code, automatically the build part will start in here. See, code changed. So once you see a new code have to change in your website or within your repository level, my automatically my workflow will start. It's not like you have to go and start it manually. So it's automated way in here. So automatically you have to start your workflow. So it's trying to show you the code change, the comments in here, which has been happened, and I can see my build job is running, and also let me check my deployment part has been getting done in here. So go to my deployment part. So it's trying to deploy ARM template. ARM template for what? To recreate my web application again. So you have in here, it's all in the path. So log in into Azure. So it's trying to log into Azure in here. It's trying to deploy your ARM template, and later on the new thing, it'll try to deploy the new code what is being built just now. Okay, so this will be recreated. So this is like your ARM template. It's been deployed your ARM template in here. Now deployed to Azure web application. So it's been done. Now it's been completed successfully completed. So we go back in here, refresh your page one more time. Now the same URL, I'm not clicking on the URL again. Where is that URL? Here it is. Now just refresh the same URL. Now I should be able to see my new code coming up in here. See, welcome to my website, and my own page code in here. Okay, so whenever you make any changes to your GitHub repository, automatically that should come up in here. That should reflect in here automatically in here. Okay, this is your DevOps. So this is like, suppose I want to change my welcome to website, don't want this one. I want to have welcome to my website, something like that. So I'll go back to my local machine where I have my application. So in here, try to change my application in here. Yeah, I can see my welcome to website. So I'll try to say welcome to DevOps. Go ahead, save it, and automatically the new part will be showing up in here. So I can see it's been changed. Only one thing is there. So I can say changing from my website to DevOps in here. Submit index.html. Yes, commit to master. I'm committing the data and push it. I'm trying to push my new things to my repository. So once we push your new things to my repository, I should see my page start with my new code what I have in here. Refresh your page. Yeah, now I can see your updated index from index file in here. So go back to my page, refresh. See, I can see my updated with my new code. I can see my pipeline got started automatically. So what we have in here, build pipeline as well as my deployment pipeline in here. So this is like your build is called as your CI. It means it's a continuous integration here. So continuous integration means it's trying to read the code continuously from GitHub. If it sees any changes in here, it try to convert my code from inconsistent to consistent format and keep it ready for my deployment in here. So it's a continuous integration. This particular part is called as what? CI, continuous integration in here. Similarly here, once my this particular pipeline is done, immediately automatically what will happening in here? My deployment part is started. So here again, it's a continuous deployment. Okay, so what do you mean by CI in here? It's a continuous integration. CD, it's a continuous deployment in here. So it will be continuous. So you no need to do anything manual in here. Everything will be in continuous. This is nothing but the CI and CD pipelines just for introduction purpose, but it's not the exact way we follow in real-time perspective. Okay, we have to write down your YAML pipeline to have your CI/CD pipeline. But just to understand the concept, just to have your it's like introduction to my DevOps spaces in here, introduction to my CI/CD pipelines. We have this particular concept in here. So whenever you make any change to your account, code in here automatically. I should be able to see my things upgraded automatically. I should see my build job, or I should see my deployment job should trigger automatically one after one in here. Okay, I believe it's been deployed. If you go back in here, refresh your page, I should see welcome to DevOps. Perfect. See, I can see the links in here. So this is like a link between my GitHub and my Azure. So you're trying to authorize, or you're trying to giving the access to your Azure level in here, and based upon that, it's trying to go ahead and trying to pull the things from your GitHub, and trying to deploy the things within your web application in here. So starting and up and running in here. Just to show you, since I refreshed my main page, it's asking again to authorized, or else it will show you the same thing. If you refresh here within the page level, doesn't ask you anything. But if you refresh within my main page level, then it will ask you again to authorize it. So that's the thing, guys, with respect to DevOps starter. So here you have to understand the main thing is like regarding your continuous integration and continuous deployment part you have in here. Deployment part or delivery, continuous delivery or continuous deployment what you have in here. Okay, and also when you're trying to go with the actual CI/CD pipelines, your web application cannot be get automatic, because you have to choose your own. You have to create your own web application on your own. It's per up to your requirement. How do you want to go with? So you don't see all the different options available for your app services within your this particular part, which has been creating automatically in here. But you have to choose your own, everything on your own with respect to your options what you have for web application. So create your web application first and provide those details within my CI/CD pipelines engine. That means it's in my YAML files engine. Okay, so we haven't been up to YAML pipelines yet, so the reason being you may not understand this particular part, but up to this level you should be able to understand. So any questions, guys, with respect to my the things which are highlighted in here in the notepad? The CI/CD pipelines, your creating of your repository within your GitHub from your Azure, pulling your running your build job, or deploying the code within your Azure level, within your code in here, all those things.
So Shyam
In
here,
real time
one small,
for GitHub
small,
authentication.
sorry.
Yeah, Ravi.
Oh, sorry. So in real time,
Yeah,
so
go
for
ahead.
GitHub authentication, right? So we'll be having a multiple orgs, right, or multiple repositories. So in that case, how we'll be doing from same thing here? It's not that one
See,
we'll be maintaining, right? So Agile world, we are maintaining different Scrum teams, and the code base will be different, right?
yeah. So here you are trying to learn only just a basic part of CI/CD. This is the initiative part of CI/CD. This is not the exact way we'll use it, or you try to go do the things within your, real-time environment. But anyway, within your real-time environment as well, when you're trying to use a code level, when you're trying to deploy the things within your Azure level, so you may be required the access as we authorized just we did as of now. So over there, you may be, when you're trying to deploy that into a production environment or live environment for the first time, then you will need to provide access manually for the first time only. But even in here as well, right? Only once it asks you for the permission. But later on, when you see any code change, automatically it's trying to run it automatically without any permissions in here. The similar case will happen when you see your exact YAML pipelines with respect to your code in here. Okay, this is just an initiative part. This is just introduction to my CI/CD pipelines. So what do you mean by CI pipeline in here? What do you mean by CD pipeline in here? Just to understand that particular part in here. So when you are having a multiple repositories, or when you have multiple applications, when you're trying to deploy, when you're trying to go within your production environment for the first time, it will ask you for the permission manually. So we are the person who can provide your things manually. I can show you how can you provide the things by just clicking on your view permissions and just go ahead with that. So for the first it's okay, but later on it never asks you because it's already authorized for your subscriptions in here. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, and someone else who's trying to speak. Is it Jitendra?
Uh, yeah,
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 Jitendra.
Shyam. So basically, yeah, so whatever the check-in that we are doing from GitHub, it's trying to build through Azure. So if there is any syntax error, any code error that we are checking to the GitHub, so in the build phase, it will take care that your code has some error, so please check. So is there any kind of validation in build phase?
Yeah, if you have any code error, anything of validation, you can see here that job is built in here. So setting up jar and actions checkout, creating an artifact directories. So wherever if I find any kind of errors in here, that will be shown in here. So each and everything is a separate step used to have your, to complete your things in here. So whenever any one of the step got fails in here, that will be shown here itself. So within your GitHub. So similarly, when you're trying to go with the real-time perspective, you will be running your CI/CD pipelines using your Azure DevOps. Within your Azure level engine. So I'll have to explain you what is the organization, all those things. So within your Azure level only, I'll try to create my repository. So till now you saw within your GitHub, but going forward, I'll try to create my repository within my Azure level only. So you will be trying to run your CI/CD pipelines within your Azure level directly, but you will not go out of box as we did today. Okay, so within while you're running your pipelines in here, you can see similar kind of stuff. What you see here, the similar kind of stuff within your Azure level as well. So if anything goes wrong in here, there itself it throws an errors in here, so that we can go ahead and we can read the things and we can rectify the things in here. So we'll be getting a lot many errors while running the pipelines. Don't worry, you can be able to understand that.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll stop here, guys, for today. So tomorrow I'll start with my new concept. Till now, it's not like a new concept; it's a continuation of your CI/CD in here. But to move forward with the CI/CD pipelines and to create my YAML files in here, so I have to create a few things called as like organization. So what is organization? And underneath this, we'll try to create your project. So what is project? And all those things we'll try to discuss in here. So this is your actual, DevOps space, guys. This is your heart of your DevOps in here. So you'll try to create organization. You'll try to create a project in here. And under my project, you can see multiple options like like Azure boards, Azure simply repose in here, repose your pipelines, your CI/CD pipelines will be created in here, and you can also see something others like your artifact and test cases. So we do not touch base with anyway with your test cases, all those things. That's purely for your testers perspective. So we'll try to go with these three things in here. How to this is a repository similar to your GitHub repository we have in here, and Azure boards. This is important. So I'll tell you, explain you what is the importance of Azure boards in here. And once you, after completion of Azure boards, once you come to my Azure repository, then again we'll talk about like pushing the same part what we've done earlier. How can I clone my Azure repository to my local machine? How can I add my files, commit, push, and pull? So all those things I'll be doing using my Visual Studio Code in here. So why I'm trying to do all those things? Because this is the what which is I require to maintain my own code in where? In my Azure repository. So we'll see all those things one after one in tomorrow's class. So what is organization first, what is project, and what is Azure boards, and then we'll jump into your Azure repositories. So once you have the discussion about repositories, then when you talk about pipelines, then you'll be talking about your CI/CD pipelines in here. So, but to reach to my pipelines, first of all, I have to understand all those things in here. This is not a mandatory, guys. Azure boards are not a mandatory, but it's helpful for us to track the work set, because when you're trying to go in your real-time environment, most people will be using your Azure boards only, rather than using other boards available. Like a kind of Jira boards, or like kind of a version 1 boards. So instead of using all those things, you will be talking about your Azure boards in here. So what is Azure boards? How can you create your user stories in here? How can you create your other features, your task in here? How can you? We'll talk about your sprints, the sprint level, all those things in here. So it's purely will be theoretical and practical as well in here. So it's not coming under your DevOps space actually. It's not, it's out a little bit out of box, but why I'm trying to take up this particular concept in here, because you may get an option, or you may get a chance to create the user stories, or you may get a chance to create your features or your epics, all those things in here. So in that scenario, you should not be dumb. Well, that doesn't mean you're trying to take in here Azure boards, so that will be helpful for you in real-time perspective. The actual thing is this repository. So currently what we have done, we spoke about your GitHub repository, and we spoke about what? About your CI and CD pipelines in here. The same thing in here. Repository and pipelines. So these two are important for me, but not this one. But let's try to have knowledge on this as well, so that you can help you in real-time environment. Okay. So anything else, guys? Right then. So we'll stop here for today, and we'll start with the new concept organization, and we'll see how it goes further. Okay. Thank you guys, and have a great day ahead, and bye.
Thank you.